So, good morning. And first thing off is, it's really heavily packed. All of these sessions that are really in parallel. So I will try. And, I will be very in trouble to choose from. So I'm appreciating that you are in my session. You won't be disappointed because I would not be, trying to selling some products, something like that. That's my experience. From the years that I've also worked on the front end platform. Not just that, of course. I'm a little bit old. I think it sees. So if you are, imagining how the 24 experienced guy in development, looks like, that's me. I hope you will not look like me, but nevertheless, so that's my story. I like to work on a lot of things. Actually, I'm also working with my kids in some web games in my spare time. So yeah, trying to be busy. In this story, it's for you most interesting that I will try to talk about the front-end development and single-page applications in specific. From the eyes of the architect, from the eyes of some person that is also involved in the connecting the front-end technology to the other, of course, back-end and all of this stuff, DevOps and product owners, etc. So I hope you'll find it interesting, maybe in some other angle. So let's dive into it. So what you should expect, as I said, it's kind of different angle. It's opinionated, so a lot of stuff that I will talk, maybe you will not be with me. So that's why there are Q&A. So just keep your questions ready to the end. And I try to avoid this kind of stuff from the year 11 or something, or 200 years ago or something like that, or which are the reasons that you will and how the SPAs are actually came to the place, etc. So I'll just admit it. I guess you are front-end devs, so please raise your hands if you are working with front-end, or a lot of guys. So that's nice. So for you, I guess I will try to adjust it then. I'll try to skip it, the basic parts, but I still think it's important. Maybe for the young guys that are starting to work on the front end, maybe they do not see it, and maybe you will have this kind of feeling. I know that, but maybe I will just summarize it. So let's begin. I have some contents, but although it's piece of papers, so we'll not just stick to the formulas, to the structure, and let's dive into that story. So the reason I actually have desired to work on that workshop, and then that's kind of shortened workshop that I'm actually talking right now. There is a lot of slides, by the way, is that actually I don't find really structurally, systematically, a lot of books, lot of literature somewhere, not how the SPA, what the SPA is, or how to do front-end development. You just start with the library, you have this masteries, tutorials, everything, but maybe you don't have or I don't find enough literature on how to do it, maybe on the principles that not really change in time. And that's a biggie, because everything is always changing, and it's always another framework, another library that try to maintain. I'm the one, I will solve all the problems, and I will solve the problems from the previous one, and then this thing, and it's constantly just pushing on and on. And actually we don't have a winner right now, because someone will say, okay, it's not Velta, it's Solid, it's Astro or whatever remix, but it's always like that. And you will see that it's kind of cycle. But luckily, if you have some principles in mind, some of the things, maybe majority of things won't change. I will also tackle with the similarities from these frameworks, not why Vue is good or why Svelte came and something like that. So first things first, so it's kind of elementary. So we have application that is constantly growing, and SPA is by definition, a fat or thick client. We will say that, and it has some parts. It has some elementary parts, and these are modules. We even have that, in the ECMA as really ECMA models, and TypeScript, etc. But basically, these are the parts that we can separate. That's the goal. We could lazy load it. We could make it specific, and we have it more these specific models by the domain, by the functionality, and also you have some shared models that you share some controls or UI UX behavior, something like that. So pretty basic. And then we came up to the as this is become complex and complex in the structures. We came into this feature based follow structure that we just follow. It's good principle. So the first one, so first separate on the modules. Second, try to do that feature based follow structure, because it brings things like code readability, and it's really easy that someone new just came on the project. It's really easily adopted to the project. Maybe first question that you came to realize is whether you should use monorepos, because firstly you could have the module, the main module with all these modules on the front end and shared, etc., as one monorepo, but even the backend together with front end. Probably some of you is developing something like Node.js or that we'll see later on, something like the full stack frameworks. But nevertheless, is the question is valid? Should we do that or not? Which are the benefits? Yeah, it depends. As always, every architect will tell you it depends on the case, and it's also this case with that. So if you want to have this, very single cycle of development and deployment, packaging is the thing. So yeah, try to do the monorepo. And we are talking about the modules. So we are just trying to separate as much as we can, but then on the other hand, as always, come to the cons to that principle, how to intercommunicate with these modules. So firstly, we could lazy load it, so it's not packed together, so glued together, to have very, very hard and large footprint. And later on, we could do something like module federation, then micro front ends, and all of the stuff. I will just came through some of them. So first, lazy loading, nothing special. I think you already using that on your beloved libraries, and it's basically just shifting the load and just delaying it by time, by feature, by some conditions, something like that. There are libraries that come years ago that solve this problem, and the packaging software like Webpack and others just do this optimization more efficiently. The next step on this, let's say, evolution of the isolation is so-called modal federation. So what is that? Actually, we have a lot of patterns that allows us to do that. That we actually separate the modal usage from other applications. So we are basically on the left side seeing that we have two applications, so albeit hosts, and we have one library, so one module that is shared amongst that. It's usually like when you're building UX library, like the vendors, they use like components, and on the right side you have multi-SPA model sharing, that you have multi-applications but multi-modules or even components. Later on you will see that that could be shared and could be used and even produced on the applications. Of course, when we just evolving more and more complexity is found, and there are patterns that allows us that we do that efficiently, especially for the intercommunication between the models and applications. Next, we have something like we have the module usage, but our application doesn't contain any features, any logic, much. They are just using as a shell, as a wireframe, and that's kind of shell-driven federation. And we have a lot of modules that are more like a plugin architecture. If you came to the story of microservices and all these architecture styles, you could see that early on that you have this kind of, let's say, imagine web portals that have a lot of modules that could be switched on and off, and it's fairly easy to maintain this application like that. We could even have that multi-shell, whereas we could have one web portal is using by other users, so consumers, or it's kind of multi-tenancy usage, or we have some kind of, let's say, admin view or user view or something like that. And given that, we go even further. We do micro frontends. So which are they? Do you work maybe with micro frontends already? Do you even work somewhere sometimes with that? Okay, one hand. So then it's a good topic to explain what it is. Why micro frontend? Because it came from microservices paradigm architecture that is well known, that you have a separate feature-based, you remember from the slides, so feature-based separation of everything, of the all layers on the backend. And some authors even say it's a complete microservice with the front ends, because it just propagates to the front end layer as well. So if you just took this service A or B or C, whatever, it could be microservice internally, but if it spans also on the front end, that's kind of complete microservice. But nevertheless, we are front end devs, so we are interested what is the micro front end. It's kind of same paradigm, so that we have this shell. Remember the previous slide? We have this federated model federated on the different models, and then spanned across the other teams, other technologies even. So, and whether we are talking about web components or other technology, nevertheless, so we could separate it. So what it brings? So what it brings, clear separation of code. Of course, it should be separated because the code is not the same. We could use different teams that are proficient on, let's say, React or Svelte or Angular, even JavaScript. So app shell also can have, this stack, written on Angular or JavaScript, whatever, and we can use this separate distributed cycle of development. So yeah, I think it's a good idea as well. So it could be some anarchic that we don't know what to do, who will do that, but we'll come to that later on. And there is another one, a really sparkly one. Recently, it's an island architecture. So for me, it's not really a clear module separation. It's more like on the component level, but nevertheless, it's on this propagation of the independence, because it's one framework that could serve other technologies as well, something like micro frontends, but it's on the one page. It's one content. It's more granular separation, and with more hydration and rendering optimization techniques in mind. So we delved with the modules. Let's dive into the components. So we are, since we are single page, of course, we are not building the pages. We have just index HTML. So we are building the components. These are our Lego blocks for building everything, and we are actually doing the componentization, and this is also one old principle, as I told you. So I'm, pretty old guy. It come with, with whether VB script or JavaScript is better, and I opted luckily on the JavaScript. So it's really fairly. All these principles are not new, but just try to imagine that these principles really not change, and it's really good that you are maybe thinking about that in that way of the architecture. So componentization, like in in the backend, in the services, we are just splitting the functionality to the parts. Nevertheless, as always, there should be some balance. There should be some border whether we should split a lot of components. I have these teams and experience that these guys just put it all on the components and just go delve into the items or anchors or labels. So everything is, maybe it's not a good idea. Try to imagine it like singular responsibility principle, very well known, that actually one component should accomplish one goal, so one purpose, to bring up some UI context, etc. So if you go deeply into that, yeah, that's the first one that I'll mention, how to build the components on the files. Of course, you all probably well know that we could have something like HTML, CSS, or style, or HTML, so view, code, and style. Later on, a lot of libraries just didn't like that. It's maybe better to have proprietary system, that we have a component that is actually accomplish all the goals that domain is given it to, so it's also single responsibility. So the domain logic is there, styles is there, code is there, so everything is, UI is there, everything is there. You will definitely have maybe styles separately, definitely as a general styles, maybe a library of styles or module that could be attached to it. You will definitely have some maybe share code, as we said before, as a shared model. But nevertheless, that's the principle. That's the principle of single file components that are predominant, I guess, on the scene. And even more, with Tailwind and other style libraries, we are even going forward to put the styles in line with, I would say it was blasphemy before. It was kind of bad practice. Don't put that, because everything should be separated. I have this nice UI guy that knows the UI and styles. It's my style guy. But now it's actually up to developers as well, so that they put this tiny little worldly graphics, and everything is there in one component. Is it okay? Is it good principle? It's better. I will leave it to you. In my projects, recent projects, we use some of these. It's okay. And whether they, devs and others struggle with the styles, it's disputable. In some cases, we have UI designer that should be employed there and should, put some styles in there. Of course, it's then hard to put it on the, on the component that has everything. But yeah, try to judge it. And if you are building the components, and you surely are in the daily basis, you should not build maybe every component in its entirety, as always, in its in each manner, in the same manner. That's therefore smart versus presentational components paradigm is invented, so that you have separate one sort of component that are smart, and smart is that they are doing the old things like contacting the services, connecting with the state, with the server, with the synchronization of the app, And on the other hand, we have the components that only serves for presentation manner and have some kind of basic behavior. And it looks like this. So you have this page that is actually a smart component, and it's often navigatable, routable, and it has a logic in it. It talks to the service and other stuff. And then we boils down to the presentational component that could have, of course, child component, etc., etc. And it could be prevalent, even paradigm and pattern for your application. So let's say most of the components could fit to the picture. I don't know if you already done that. We done in some project like that. It works. But of course, as always, it's not applicable to all scenarios. There are some framers that use some other techniques that could help us, not maybe to just avoid that, but to really help us out. And on the other hand, is component-driven design and smart and dumb components. So everything is really not fit to all. Probably you already seen that in some cases. So let's look at the example. You have the dashboard and you have widgets, and this dashboard, if this would be smart versus dumb, this dashboard should be coupling the logic to talking to the servers for every widget, and it's really not scalable. We done that and we seen okay, it's not good, so we will put the logic as well in the on each widgets, because then it's more like micro front ends, or even islands, because these are the components there that could be optimized, etc., and it's better. So it's not fit for all. Also the layouts. So the layouts could, you could wrap the components together with the styles and have some theming, and it doesn't really fit to the components, but nevertheless, so is the another principle for you. So let's finish with the components, with the models. So we have the SPA, basically with the structure and functionality more or less internal, and we want to talk to the server, and we do it, I guess, most of us with HTTP, REST API, asynchronously, etc. We could use something like GraphQL. It's quite popular with optimizing the queries. It could be a good fit for you. But if we are talking about interactivity, if you're talking about near real time or even real time, in milliseconds, in nanoseconds, you can't do that with HTTP. You have to employ some other techniques that are more let's say protocol ready to have this transmission. And I think the good thing to know today is gRPC, which is actually the protocol buffers protocol that use these proprietary proto files. It's great for streaming, because streaming is also emerging to be popular for the rendering as well. And it's language neutral and extensible, but you have to be aware you should have front end and back end ready for that. You don't just need to have your, let's say, React on gRPC. You have to have some backend there. But it's definitely optimized for streaming and for these scenarios that are also well known to the other side. And other side could be even TypeScript. So if you have TypeScript from one side and other side, you don't have to just have contracts. Or you have the classes as proto. You could have just contracts that flow streams to other side. It's actually the same language. You even have that as a full stack framework, if you like it like that. And I think it gets traction more and more. You will see later on the not just SPAs, but beyond that on the full stack architecture and development cycle. So let's start. Let's stay on the communication. One concept that maybe could we miss is intercepting. Interceptors are found in some of libraries, and I think they're also a good fit for some thingies that we could invent for because they are actually intercepting the requests and responses from the client to the server, and we could use it for a lot of stuff like authentication, like logging, like all these cross-cutting concerns. And what is interesting in this story that we could even further enhance it with the PWA. And I don't know if you work with PWA, anyone? Sometimes. Okay, some hand, that is good. So some argue that they are actually not this SPA. I think it is because it's kind of specialization. They are using this intercepting mechanism called service worker on the browser to actually work this out. So let's consider this situation. So page is actually trying to browse something. So put the request on the server, it's intercepted by the service worker, which is, by the way, not inside the application scope. It's it's another browser scope. So it's kind of above the application, and it actually catches that and firstly contact the cache. So it's also communicate with the browser capabilities like caching, and then tries to present the data from the cache if the network is not available or network is not stable, something like that. So it's kind of offline first. So we try to first grab the offline data and then try to do the networking. And I think it's a good paradigm as well, and it's really not so exotic because everybody uses that, because all of applications more or less are now PWA or PWA ready, and you can actually really find it out if you browse to your some social media app or something like that, and you don't have the stable network. It does show, doesn't show this dinosaur, something like that. It shows the skeletons, something that are progressing, and this is actually the PWA that tries to make at least some kind of minimal layout for you and try to build it before it gets some data from the network. So I guess it's a good paradigm as well. And lastly, so the state. Why the lastly? Because I think the principle is that we should build our pages and components like stateless. Everything should be stateless as possible. So you should really try to avoid the state as possible. In theory, of course, in practice, we will not happily do that. And if we won't be able to solve all our questions and challenges through some kind of communication through the components, so intercommunication with the components with some events or properties that are propagated, something like that, routing, we should use the state. And how could we do that? Of course, we will not communicate abruptly between the components. We should do something in between, and that's mediator pattern, also one well-known pattern from before, from the backend, that we'll use happily or not for a lot of operations that needs mediation between the same things and try to be synchronized. And even further, there are a lot of patterns. It's definitely not the new one, but I would say it's really rather a pattern, not just not just solution as a redux, because it actually explains how this state centralized state machine should work. Or other libraries are, I would argue just they are a variation of the pattern that we have view, that we have some actions, and then the action actually goes to the store and reducer, and this reducer actually provides new state on the store. and this state then is put or pushed to the UI view. So it's a cycle that goes on, and we have a lot of different technologies and in libraries like observable, like signaling, all of these things that could be something like reducer, let's say deduced to the reducer action state and UI. And is it a good fit for all? Of course, my answer, no. Always there are exceptions, and there could be really cumbersome for situations that we have a large component chain. For instance, you have one page, so albeit smart component, you have maybe, I don't know, 10 chains, so childs of the components in the chain, and you don't need and have to just providing the state on and just putting the properties or whatever using the state machine to build up this state to that you have these components. You could override it. There is a pattern for it. It's called higher order components. In some libraries like Blazor, it's called cascading properties. It's the same, more or less the same thing. So we actually put the context on the components we wish to enrich with something, usually with state. So something general, let's say, or thema, or which current user is logged in, or company information, whether it's multi-tenancy or something like that. And we actually overriding this, encoupled component design by the overriding state flow. I think also that's a good principle for using and just block cut the chain of the components. And yeah, so I will try to maybe now aggregate the knowledge and the things that I presented before. So firstly, we had modules, components, and this design. Also, the separation of models by the federation and stuff. And the other side, we have the communication that could goes, with other ways. And we come to the backend for frontend pattern. I don't know if you know that pattern, maybe. Okay, great, one hand. So it's not really known. I don't know why, because I like it. It's not, my best friend forever, but nevertheless, it's really good pattern. I use it a lot in my with my teams because of one reason. I will explain, in one sentence. Try to. So it's something like model federation. So you have these modules that are built to serve API that is built to serve the front end, but in the sense of the layout. So the API is organized and constructed to be really optimized what will be needed on the layout. So for instance, which view, the normalized view for the grids or something like that, or this payload that will go with the commit or something. And it's really specialized on the layout that you will provide. And then you can provide multiple APIs that will serve different applications or modules. And what is interesting, the front-end devs are actually in charge to define these APIs because they are needed it. So if you are front-end dev and you need the API just for these layouts that you will build, actually from the mockups, from the user requirements, etc. So you will say, okay, I'll need this API with this definition. So also connected with the Graphy API a little bit, maybe recently, but that's the principle, and I think it's a good one. So as a front end, you don't need to just wait for the backend guy to just bring me this API. I cannot wait anymore, because you are now responsible for the creation of the API layer, just this REST API layer or whatever. So these were the SPAs and their, let's say, design. In this talk about more like architectural view. I hope you like it. But now, are they a perfect choice? Of course not. there are a lot of choices that they PA, so multi-page applications are better. We could even say that they are having a kind of comeback lately, especially with CAO and SSR, something like that. Also, it's arguably, and I find it really interesting with some architects, they say whether it's good that you have a really thick layer of the front end, thick layer of the back end, with even different technologies. There are army of people there that should be working on the as devs and testers, etc., on both the stacks that are really big. And also, as mentioned, PWA as offline first and mobile first applications, whether you should actually build a mobile application or some kind of it's kind of a hard choice. And because recently we are shifting towards the server. Yeah, I don't know. I won't be a judge of that. Whether it's a good idea, I know the factors and reasons for that. That's optimization, and the optimization, especially for the rendering. And if you go from the, I don't know if it's really seen. I try to do the font as possible larger, but from the left side to the right side, there are plethora and spectrum of different kind of rendering strategies that could make your SPA better, so that loads better, loads faster, that behaves better, that they are in the granular sense by even each component are optimized for loading, etc. So therefore I also mentioned streaming and dehydration. And what is dehydration? I don't know if you heard that. Already work on some project that use these principles, but it's actually, I would say, just revive. So imagine the paradigm is the simple. So page is static, and you just mark the parts of the page that are actually will be interactive when you need it. So when this happened, this thing happened, so whether it's time or some feature or some click, then this part becomes alive. So it's kind of actually reviving, and it becomes alive and interactive. And that's kind of also the idea from the, if you remember, island architecture that comes with the Astro and Marco and other frameworks that are coming up. We have full hydration, progressive hydration, regardless of their optimization. And the last point that I want to share with you is all that I mentioned before, and where we are now is more in the not really SPA area, but the area that will try to shift forward to the server side because of this optimization of the rendering, optimization of the features that will come along, that we try to support SEO, SSR, or streaming, or very interactive pages, but although trying to optimize to make it more static as possible. And even some frameworks mandate that they do not ship any JavaScript on the client anymore, which is really arguably, but nevertheless it's a rendering optimization era, I think, and shifting towards the meta frameworks and even full stack frameworks like Next or whatever letter comes between these two. So so there are a lot of frameworks to try to ship this full version of their front-end framework, even on the server side, make it more optimal to the loading, rendering, and all of this stuff. So here we are. So I hope I'm on time. So we talked about a lot of stuff, maybe on, as I said, on different angle. I hope you liked it that way. So we try to present some patterns and principles that are here to stay, that you could use and be, let's say, confident that will stay for a while, and maybe some new stuff that will go to your let's say, for the next steps for your takeaway for today. So Thank you very much for being such a good audience, and I'm ready for your questions.